All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Ryan Harrington. I lead the technical team and data science team for the Delaware Data Innovation Lab, and I'm so excited to welcome everybody as we launch the FAFSA Dashboard in partnership with TeenSharp. In terms of today, we're going to talk through a couple of things real quick. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, I'm just going to briefly introduce the Delaware Data Innovation Lab and then our partner TeenSharp as well. And from there, we'll just get right into talking about FAFSA, some of the issues that our partner TeenSharp brought to us with that, and ultimately what we did to address it. Really the goal of our project here was to tell a story that people can get the data for it, but it's not necessarily easy to do. And that's one of the things that the lab really wants to do. So the lab is a 501c6 organization built in November. And our goal is to bring together data scientists, analysts, technologists, engineers, who can work on community challenges with the goal of increasing innovation into community collaboration, and ultimately highlight diversity in the work as well. We've done that by pulling together an amazing group of fellows, one of which you'll hear from today. We have 10 fellows with us joining from across the country who came to Delaware to work on Delaware problems. And those people are those scientists, those engineers, those technologists, and they represent a pretty wide array of diverse lived experiences as well. Those fellows, starting in November, had the chance to work on 6 projects. They covered a pretty wide range of things, all of what I would describe as being COVID adjacent problems. So those are everything from understanding viral load in wastewater, to the eviction moratorium and what happened there, and to today's conversation, which is about FAFSA, which we'll talk about in a second. So with that being said, I think it's really important to highlight our community partner here, who they initially brought this problem to us. When we first launched the lab, we were looking for problems in the community that we could help with. And Audrey Aline reached out and said, hey, are you looking for something? Can I help you out? What can we do? And we quickly formed this relationship. And with that, I will introduce Audrey Aline, the co-founder and CEO of TeenSharp, to tell his story.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank everyone for joining. I'm Audrey Aline. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TeenSharp. Just to give some background for this, TeenSharp is an organization that's Wilmington-based that works with low-income students and students of color to prepare them for top colleges and for equity-centered leadership. And with TeenSharp, as with a lot of organizations right now in the community, the pandemic has kind of thrown things for a loop, and we're trying to figure out also, what are some of the unique dynamics now as a result of the, how the environment in higher ed has changed. And one of the things that we started to see, and we read some national research on that, is that FAFSA completion rates were down. And so after learning about the Data Innovation Lab, we wanted to look and say, is there something more that we can dig into here to get ahead of any potential gaps that we might see in the state of Delaware, as well as really start to provide information to schools and also community-based partners and just the community in general to make sure that in Delaware, a small state, we really could kind of tackle this to make sure that students are getting access to all the aid that they need, all the support that they need. And so I went to Compass Red and to the Innovation Lab, Data Innovation Lab. I was really excited that they wanted to kind of dig into this and use the firepower they have with their analytical firepower to really help families and students.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Audrey. So I'm Rocky. I am one of the fellows that worked on this problem. As Audrey very eloquently explained, it basically started with the onset of COVID and the impact of that on the education sector. We also know that the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, is super important for low-income students and students of color during the college application process. So we really wanted to focus in to see if those students were being negatively impacted in the state of Delaware. We're not the first people to discover this. This has been national headlines for the past few months. Several different news sources have also covered the decline in FAFSA application numbers nationwide. But again, we wanted to focus solely on the state of Delaware. Awesome. So our two main goals were to make it easier for families, communities, and advocacy organizations to see and understand aggregated FAFSA data. As you'll see in a moment, we basically combine different data sets and put them together in one place to make it easier for the user to get all the relevant information together. And we also put the FAFSA application data in the context of school demographic data provided by the state of Delaware. Throughout this process, we met with community stakeholders at various points. We even met with the Department of Education, and we should point out that they actually do provide student level FAFSA application information to school counselors directly on a weekly basis during the school year. So school counselors are very aware of which students have completed the FAFSA, which students haven't. But this dashboard was created more for community use because the community does not have access to that level of data. So what we did, we merged publicly accessible data sets taken from studentaid.gov and the Delaware Open Data Portal. We combined monthly reports of FAFSA completion numbers for different Delaware schools with the metadata available on the Open Data Portal, including number of guidance counselors per school, percent of BIPOC students per school, percent of low-income students per school, 6-year graduation rate, and more. And then we put all this together into a dashboard for public, traditional, and charter high schools that tracks application numbers from October of 2018 to December of 2020. So overall, the state of Delaware saw a 4% year-over-year decrease in FAFSA application rates. So in the 2018 to 2019 school year, the overall FAFSA completion rate for the state of Delaware was 63%, meaning 63% of all of the seniors enrolled completed the FAFSA by September of the year that they graduated. Last year, the year that COVID hit, that number dropped 4 percentage points to 59%. So we are seeing that same issue that the country is experiencing in terms of a decrease in FAFSA application numbers. So this is a plot of all of the schools on our dashboard. Each dot is a different school. And we are comparing the FAFSA completion rate from the school year 2018 to 2019 versus the FAFSA completion rate of this past year with COVID. Schools above the line had a higher completion rate in September of 2020 compared to September of 2019, and schools below the line had a lower completion rate comparing those two school years. So when we add in the information of percent of BIPOC students that we again got from the state of Delaware, it becomes clear that schools with lower completion rates are typically schools with higher BIPOC percentages. So as you can see using this scale, schools with higher BIPOC percentages are orange and yellow, and those orange and yellow dots tend to be at the lower end of completion rates for both years. Schools where a greater percentage of students identified as BIPOC had higher year-over-year completion of FAFSA than their peers. So what this means is the difference. So here the yellow and orange bars tended to be towards the top part of the difference. And schools that were more majority white, the purple and pinks on this graph, had a bigger drop in their year-over-year change. So this is a screenshot of what the dashboard looks like. There are multiple views and I'm about to take you through it.
Rocky, can you just pause for a second? And I realize we never defined for people what BIPOC means. I think that would probably be pretty helpful for everybody.
Totally, yes, my apologies. So BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. So it's basically the aggregation of all students that identify as non-white at a school. Great. So on the DDIL website, we have embedded our dashboard, and the homepage of the dashboard is a state view. Great. So this summarizes school performance across the state and also gives you different options to filter by those demographic categories that we were mentioning that we were really interested in looking at, low-income students and BIPOC students. So for example, if we wanted to look at schools that were 50% or more low income, we'll see that not sure why it's not working. Okay, well, we'll do 50% or more BIPOC. Okay, so as we can see, schools that are 50% or more BIPOC had a lower FAFSA completion rate compared to the state average, which was 59.5%. This dashboard also allows us to easily access the metadata for schools as well as a school report card. So for example, if we look at the Conrad Schools of Science, we can then pull up additional information about their number of guidance counselors, their senior class size, and their specific trends from the last school year to school year ending in 2020. Apologies for the slow internet. Okay, great. So this is for Conrad Schools of Science. They have 3 guidance counselors, 172 seniors were enrolled for this year, and we can select the number of seniors enrolled for last year, which is 161. So they had a slight increase in that population. And these plots show the differences for the specific school. Great. Now we can open it up to questions.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, so really excited about putting this together and working with Team Sharp on this. The goal is really to make this data that is publicly available just easier for people to see and understand. And so we're hoping the dashboard can be a tool that people can use to do that, and a tool that community organizations can use to help talk about the importance of FAFSA for all students to complete, regardless of what they're doing. In some of the glossary items for it, we have some links in there to resources that students can use to apply and organizations they can get in contact with. Yeah, Rocky, thank you so much for talking us through that. And as she said, happy to take any questions at this point. And it might be easiest, raise your hand, that could work, or if you want to put your question in the chat, I should have clarified that earlier, are both great options. Great, so question is, does this include private schools too? So the answer is no, and the reason for that is because, so while private school data for FAFSA completion is actually available on studentaid.gov, it is not available through some of the other data sources we were using to kind of tell the story about the circumstances at schools, from things like number of guidance counselors or anything else. And so we made the decision to not include those just because we couldn't give that other additional context there. But that data is available as well. Another question is around who we would anticipate using the dashboard. So in terms of that, we really leave that up to our community partners. Audrey, maybe you could answer additionally as well. So for this, actually, not the list of all the questions coming in, because that is totally distracting me. I apologize. Audrey, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure, I think it's a great question. I mean, for us, you know, I know that schools get information from the Department of Ed on this front, so they have it. I think there's some things that are in this the dashboard, or that wouldn't be, kind of the way that it's kind of triangulated with other information that could be helpful to the schools. So I think that's in districts is one piece of it. I think another piece of it is broader awareness about this. So what we'd like to have with this, in addition to the dashboard release, is like, there was an article already about the dashboard. We'd like people that are on here and others to make more noise about, in general, FAFSA, right? Because we don't want families missing out on aid. If you look around the country, college enrollment rates are down. And significantly, and I think in general, like one of the steps, the key steps that is kind of indicating someone's going to likely go is, have they even completed the FAFSA? So I think our goal is that community organizations have a wider understanding of completion rates at different schools. That there's the media, right? There's other people that can kind of dig into this, and hopefully that also kind of raises the level of information. There are great resources in Delaware to support people through this. With Teen Sharp, as we also were a recipient of the CARES Act innovation grant, and we were texting students all around the county and even the state about this. And we could tell them, hey, if you haven't done your FAFSA, go to Stand By Me. Go. Here's resources. So there are resources here, but we have to kind of collectively, raise kind of make more noise about, the benefits of doing this.
Thanks, Auden Ray. And actually, a follow-up question for you from Pam George. She asked, how can parents leverage this dashboard? I feel like you'd be able to best answer that.
Thank you. All the great questions. How can parents leverage this? And we haven't. I'm very excited with Teen Sharp to get this in front of parents, and so to see how they react to this and engage with this. But I think for one is just knowing some of these gaps. Like, are there schools right now, different parts of the state, different kinds, like you can see these comparisons, right? So a lot of times people can only look within their own school, and that doesn't help you understand kind of comparatively or context of, like, is this a high number, or things not where they need to be, and maybe that can also push for some community level advocacy, right? Or what are the ways that the community can rally to support on this front. So I think parents can look at it from that front. And then the other piece is that the goal is that where this is located, there will also be other community resources listed right on the page, and some are there now. But that's something that can be built out so that people go to it, right? They get a sense of where things are in their given child's school, and then they could say, well, hey, let me reach out to this nonprofit organization. Let me reach out to get this kind of support. So I think that's what we're thinking about.
Yeah. There's a few questions on here about data sources. Feel like we can tackle a few of those at once. So Rocky, I'll have you answer these as I ask them. So one is just, what are the data sources we're using here? Let's start there.
Sure. We're using studentaid.gov, which is a government-run website, and we're using the Open Delaware Data Portal and 3 different data sets from that portal.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning that that was an investment the state made last year, last October, I believe, to publish all that on the Open Data Portal. And it wouldn't be possible without that. And same thing for the studentaid.gov data as well. So it's a great resource. Another question was, why can't we do something about this weekly as opposed to right now we're showing monthly?
Sure. So the FAFSA website, studentaid.gov, does release weekly reports also for Delaware schools. But once a month has passed, they only provide aggregated monthly level data, if that makes sense. So we can't go back and look at October 2018 data at the weekly level. So we just thought it was best for consistency's sake to keep it at the monthly level. Yeah.
That's something that hopefully over time we could do, as we've started to capture that weekly data, but you've got to build the backlog of it to be able to make that useful. So that is kind of a long-term goal, to be able to put that level of granularity there. And we could theoretically be able to see, hey, a school did a FAFSA drive, and the next week you see the numbers go up. And it's worth mentioning there's a little bit of a lag on that as the data gets compiled as well. Thank you for those questions. Just sorting through, there's a couple of questions about like leading indicators and would that be useful? So the exact question is, what could this data be used for from a leading indicator status? What are the long-term consequences of lower FAFSA completion rates? So Rocky, I'll start with you if you have thoughts there, but Auden-Ray, this is your world from a college access perspective, and maybe you could fill in some of the gaps as well.
Yeah, I'll give my 2 cents as a former educator myself. So like we mentioned, FAFSA completion numbers are a leading indicator, especially for low-income students and students of color, in terms of who's going to end up matriculating in college. So students obviously apply to college before they complete the FAFSA, then they complete the FAFSA, and then they hear back from colleges about their financial aid package, which usually is a huge factor in whether a student actually ends up going and attending school that following fall. So if low-income students and students of color are not completing the FAFSA at the same rates that they used to, that means we're probably going to end up seeing fewer low-income students and students of color matriculating to college, which means implications for the business sector as well, as we think of college graduates as the future workforce.
Auden-Ray, anything to add there?
Yeah, you said all. I mean, I think for us in our work, a lot of times, we Teen Chart people talk about the college access side of our work, but the college affordability is, we're also that's really critical for every student that we work with and advise. Making sure that they're not going to college and taking on a huge amount of debt in a way that's going to be crippling, right, as they launch into their career. So you just don't want to leave money on the table. And I think making sure you complete the FAFSA and you get all the aid that's needed. So I think that's the long-term consequence if people aren't doing it, right, is that they're not getting the aid they need, or they're probably also not likely even showing up in college.
Auden-Ray, question directly for you. So this is from Larry Negengast, I believe. Auden-Ray, how certain are you that changes found in this data is COVID related as opposed to other possible causes?
I know that I'm a former data nerd, so I didn't have any hands on the data at this front. So I know, being careful about like causality, but like what we've seen from our work, right, is that, there are a lot of new questions that people were asking about, right, like what should even our students that were already accepted into college last year, right, like should I go, right, should I go gap year, right? There's all these kind of things that people are thinking about now, and that was earlier on, that was that class, and now you think about this class of seniors. There are a lot of considerations about is the experience going to be the same, right? People are also being hit economically, right? So I can't for certain say it was all COVID related, but I think what we've seen from doing this at Teen Chart for 12 years, right, that like the conversations, the dynamics that are going on are unprecedented, and so that's why you're also seeing around the country, higher ed institutions. Some that are seeing huge dips. There was an article just recently about University of Delaware and their application. Someone asked in the comments about college applications, for example, like can we look at data for that? But I know University of Delaware reported that their college applications are down. I don't want to quote the number, maybe 15% or so from Sussex County students. I don't know for Rocky and Ryan, I can't remember exactly, but I thought there were some dynamics around county differences in completion rates. So maybe you guys can speak to that, but like that would kind of correspond with what University of Delaware just reported recently.
Absolutely, and actually on the topic of kind of other data, there are some questions around next steps. One directly, what are next steps? But the first, a little bit longer. So in the future, are there plans to include how many students apply to college each year from the school or district so that numbers can be interpreted more accurately? So for example, if schools have less students applying to college, it makes sense to have lower rates of FAFSA completion, which is a really fair point. I think it's worth mentioning we kept with kind of first things first, and I'll let anyone else fill in, Rocky or Auden-Ray. And that's the type of data we'd love to add in and provide that nuance and context over time. Want to see what usage is and what people are using it for in the short term, and then that's a conversation to have later. And it does certainly rely on, once again, we're using publicly available data sources. So if that's possible to layer in, that's something we'd love to do for sure. Rocky, Auden-Ray, if you have other thoughts there, that'd be great.
Yeah, just thought that this is a great next step for us to further build upon the dashboard. In a preliminary search, there weren't any publicly accessible data sets, especially made possible by the state, of the number of applications that are coming out of various schools. So this would likely have to be something that we would do in conjunction with school districts.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you everyone for being here as well.
There was a question, Ryan, about from Juliet.
Oh.
About FAFSA resources.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I missed that one. Apologies, Juliet. Audrey, it sounds like you've got a response there.
No, I was saying that, that as I said earlier, that there are some links there. And that's something that I know Juliet said the Department of Education in Delaware, and Karen, thanks for joining, that like we would love to see this as something that that can be kind of, this is version 1. And I think it has a lot of fodder. But what kind of other things can be added there? As I said before, there are a lot of great resources the state has, and other partners in the state. So like we'd love to populate it there. But I think, as Ryan said, we want to figure out how people are kind of engaging with it, using it, making it possible for people to give feedback, so that even more robust resources could be linked to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Audrey, and thank you for calling out that I missed that one. Really appreciate it. But with that being said, I realize we're getting to the top of the hour. Just want to say thank you again to everyone who was able to join us, and the fellows who made the work possible, Rocky, you, and Tala, who could not join us today in particular. And Audrey, thank you for bringing the problem to us, and we're excited to see what we can do with it from here. If anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to the lab. We'll make all this work available. You can find us at ddil.ai and through all kinds of social means. And we will talk with everyone at another session soon. Thanks, everybody.